Section 1. 12 Years in the Shadows. Hey friends, tonight we begin with a hush, the kind that settles over your heart when the world gets quiet, and your soul is still carrying something it's been holding far too long. Imagine a narrow street in the edge of the city. Stone homes stacked closely, vines curling over wooden doors. The sun is just beginning to rise, but in one dark room she is already awake. She always wakes early. She doesn't want to disturb the house, the neighbors, the day. She's learned how to move in silence. If you thought miracles were always loud and dramatic, think again. Sometimes the greatest ones begin in the quietest places. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to leave a comment. Where are you listening from, and what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the hush of her morning. A single oil lamp still glows faintly in the corner. She sits near it, shoulders rounded, head bowed, the same position she's taken every morning for 12 years. 12 years of bleeding, 12 years of weakness, 12 years of no answers, no relief, no touch, no place to go that doesn't remind her of what she's lost. You feel the weight of it in her bones, in her sigh. She's not old, but she carries an age that doesn't come from years. It comes from waiting, from enduring. She used to count the days. Now they blur. She's tried every remedy, every healer, every whispered hope. She's traded coin for crushed herbs and oils and chants. She's listened to voices that promised and vanished, and still her body bleeds. And in this culture, that means more than just pain. It means separation. It means impurity. It means no one touches her. No one welcomes her. No one calls her clean. There's a basket beside her, old linen cloths folded neatly. She washes them in secret, dries them before dawn. She keeps her condition hidden because if they knew, they'd push her further to the edge than she already is. What do you do when the world stops seeing you? When your pain becomes background noise? When your name gets replaced by your condition? She used to be someone's daughter. She used to be someone's friend. Now, she's the one no one looks in the eye. But this morning, something feels different. She doesn't know what it is yet. Only that her breath catches in a way it hasn't in a long time. Maybe it was something in the dream she had before she woke. Maybe it was the story she heard whispered through the market stalls yesterday. Maybe it's the faintest crack of light seeping through her shuttered window. You watch her reach for her shawl. Her hands tremble, not from pain this time, but from something smaller, something softer. Hope. It's still a seed, still buried under layers of fear and disappointment. But tonight, we go back to the moment when it stirred, when the long dark didn't feel final, when, just for a second, the silence cracked and something said, "What if? What if today is different? What if this pain doesn't have the final word? What if she steps into the world, not to be seen, but to reach?" What would you have done, waking in her place? Would you have dared to rise? Would you have dared to believe? The oil lamp flickers. She stands slowly, not sure where she's going, but knowing she can't stay here anymore. Awaiting continue Section 2. Section 2. The narrow alley behind her home is still shaded in early light. Dust settles soft between the stones, and the faintest breeze carries the scent of earth and olive leaves. You follow quietly as she moves with care, hugging the edges of the walls. She's done this before, slipping through the town like a shadow. Not to be seen, only to survive. Every door she passes tells a story. She knows them all, that wooden one with the deep grooves near the base. That was the first house she visited after her bleeding began. An old healer with oils and prayers he promised a cure. She left with her purse lighter and her heart heavier. The blue door down by the well? That's where the herbalist lived. He wrapped roots in linen, told her to sleep with them under her pillow. She tried. She believed. She woke in pain again. One door after another. One voice after another. She remembers each coin she traded for empty promises. Each time someone took her money with soft words but never looked into her eyes. She had a name once, but over time they stopped using it. They'd say things like, the woman with the illness, the one who can't be touched, the one who never gets better. And so she stopped speaking, too. She learned to keep her suffering to herself. Not because she wanted to, but because hope had become too expensive. What happens when you run out of places to go? When your story becomes too long for people to listen to? When even your own reflection grows tired of you? She pauses at a closed gate, hand brushing its edge. She had once begged a priest to pray for her there. He told her she must be cursed. She never returned. You feel the ache in her ribs, not just from the illness, but from the rejection, from the shame layered on top of suffering, from being told again and again that this is who you are now. But this morning, something different stirs beneath the shame. It's not loud, it doesn't shout, it whispers, and it says, "Try one more time." She doesn't know where this voice comes from, only that it doesn't sound like the ones from the past. It's not selling her a cure. It's inviting her to hope. She tucks her hands into her shawl, glancing around each corner. The streets are beginning to stir, merchants lifting cloth over their booths, children chasing doves between baskets of dates, fishermen carrying nets still wet with salt. She steps around them quietly, unnoticed, just another figure in the fringe. But she hears something. Words exchanged between two women by a fruit stall. He's here, the teacher, the one from Nazareth. And suddenly her steps hesitate. She's heard this name before. Jesus. Some say he teaches like no one else. Some say demons obey him. Some say he heals, just by touch, just by speaking. Some say he sees people, really sees them. She doesn't know what she believes, but something in her chest moves when she hears his name. You see her blink hard, like her eyes are trying to remember how to hope. She doesn't run. She doesn't shout. She simply changes direction. Not because she's sure, but because, after 12 years, the tiniest possibility feels louder than her doubt. What would you have done, hearing those words? Would you have turned back, protecting what little strength you had left? Or would you have followed them, like breadcrumbs through a weary heart? She walks now with a small urgency, still keeping to the edges, still afraid of being recognized, still unsure if she belongs. But every door she's tried before led to nothing. Maybe this time she won't knock. Maybe this time she'll just reach. Awaiting continue Section 3. Section 3. Stories from the roadside. The marketplace is fully awakened now. Stalls bursting with color, figs and pomegranates spilling from woven baskets, linen flapping gently in the breeze like sails in a slow-moving sea. You walk with her along the outskirts, where the crowd isn't quite as thick, but the noise still swells. Voices, footsteps, distant laughter, the sharp clang of a dropped jar. She keeps her shawl pulled close, not from the cold, but from the quiet terror of being noticed. 12 years of isolation will do that. Make even daylight feel like something to hide from. And yet, in that morning din, she listens, not to the vendors, not to the children laughing. She listens for the name, Jesus. She first heard of him from a man selling dates by the roadside weeks ago. He had spoken softly to a traveling couple, said he'd seen a paralyzed man walk again. Swore on his life the man had been carried in and left dancing. She didn't speak to him. She just stood behind the stall of spices, listening. Later, by the well, two women filled their jars while whispering of demons cast out with a word. He doesn't even raise his voice, one had said. He just looks at them and they flee. And the blind boy in the village over? They say he sees now. That his first glimpse of the world was the face of a man who smiled at him like a brother. These are the stories that have traveled faster than merchants, faster than soldiers. Stories with roots in people's hearts, not scrolls or titles. She didn't know what to make of them at first. So many claims, so many tales. But the way they were told, not with hype, not with fanfare, but with stillness, with awe. It planted something in her, because she knew how hard it was to talk about hope after you've lost it. And these people weren't speaking out of wishful thinking. They were speaking like something sacred had touched them. Now she hears it again. Just ahead, two older men beneath a fig tree. He's passing through the town today, one says. They say he'll teach by the water, down by the slope. She doesn't ask for directions. She doesn't need to, because her feet are already moving. Have you ever followed something you couldn't explain? Some pull deeper than logic? She doesn't know what she'll say if she finds him. She doesn't plan to say anything. Not like others do. She just wants to get close. She doesn't want to make a scene. She doesn't want him to see her. Because if he sees her, truly sees her, he'll know. Know that she's unclean. that she's been bleeding, that no one is supposed to touch her. But if she can get just near enough, just once, if she can touch the hem of his robe, not his hands, not his eyes, not his voice, just the edge, the fabric that trails behind him. She doesn't know why, but it feels like that would be enough. You walk beside her now, feel the shift in her breath, hear the rising quiet in her chest. She's not asking for attention. She's not asking for a spotlight, just healing. In secret. Like the pain has been. What would you have believed walking in her sandals? Would you have trusted stories passed from stranger to stranger? Would you have risked stepping toward someone holy while feeling anything but? The slope comes into view. She sees the sea beyond it, blue and wide, and near its edge, a gathering, a crowd forming, pressed together like reeds by the riverbank, and somewhere within it, him. Her pace slows. She pulls her shawl tighter. 12 years of hiding tug at her ankles, but the stories won't let her turn back. They aren't just stories now. They're the reason her heart is beating faster. They're the reason she's here. And somewhere in the sound of the wind off the water, she hears something else. It's not over yet. Awaiting continue Section 4. Section 4, Hope feels dangerous. The crowd is thicker than she expected. They press together like a living wall, swaying slightly as more gather near the edge of the shoreline. Voices rise and fall. Some call out, hopeful and eager. Others murmur with curiosity. A few are skeptical, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, watching but unwilling. She stays back, for now. You can feel it in her breath, the tug of retreat. Because hope, after so long, doesn't feel safe. Hope feels dangerous, not because it's wrong, but because it's fragile. Like a flame in the wind, one wrong gust, and it disappears again. She's hoped before. Every time she visited a healer, every time she waited outside a synagogue, listening for prayers meant for others, every time she heard someone say, "You just need more faith." Each time, hope had lifted her just high enough for the fall to sting. Now, even standing still in this crowd feels risky. She keeps her head low, her body folded inward, as if invisibility could be armor. Jesus hasn't appeared yet, not clearly. She hears his name spoken in excited bursts near the front. Someone says he's teaching. Another says he's healing, but she can't see. Still, her feet stay planted. Even as her doubts scream louder, what if it's not true? What if the stories were wrong? What if she touches him and nothing happens? Or worse, what if he feels it, turns, and rebukes her? What if he sees her not as a soul reaching for healing, but as a woman who should not have touched him? She grips her shawl tighter. Her heart beats in her throat, and her body, so familiar with pain, reminds her just how weak she's become. And yet, she hasn't left. That matters. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not run away. Sometimes faith doesn't look like shouting praise. Sometimes it looks like standing still when everything in you wants to disappear. She notices a child near her. A small girl sitting beside a basket of olives, humming softly. Their eyes meet for a brief second. The girl doesn't look away. She just smiles. It's a small moment, but it lands gently on her heart like dew on dry earth. Maybe someone can see her, and not shrink back. Maybe God hasn't turned his face from her after all. She takes one step closer, then another, moving through the outer edges of the crowd, brushing shoulders, avoiding eye contact. Some people don't notice her. Others step away quickly when she passes. But she keeps going. Not quickly, not boldly, just steadily. Because something inside her says, you've come this far. Don't stop now. And you, watching her from just beside, can feel it too. It's the kind of courage that doesn't roar. It whispers, it trembles, but it moves. You wonder how many times have you pulled back from what your soul needed most, simply because hope felt too costly? How many times have you chosen the pain you know over the possibility you fear? She's not fearless now. Her body aches, her shame is loud, but something else is louder, and it says, he is near. She doesn't know how she'll do it. The crowd is thick, the way is blocked, but the moment feels close, like it's waiting for her just beyond the edge of her reach. She closes her eyes, breathes deeply, and with the next step, her heart beats the name she's barely dared to say aloud. Jesus. Awaiting continue Section 5. Section 5. The morning she rose early. Before the sun even stretched across the rooftops, before the doves cooed on the window ledges, before the first merchant unrolled his woven mat, she had already risen. You walk with her through memory now. back to the moment this day began. She had opened her eyes not with dread, but with stillness, a rare kind, the kind that doesn't come from strength or optimism, but from surrender. 12 years of waiting had emptied her in so many ways, and somehow in that emptiness, space had opened, space where faith could flicker again. Her body still ached. The bleeding had not stopped, but there was something in her spirit that had stood up before her feet ever did. And so, while the others still slept, she sat quietly at the edge of her mat, hands in her lap, feeling the hush of the early hour hold her gently. She wrapped herself with care, each fold of the shawl like a whisper. You still belong. You are not forgotten. And when she stood slowly, carefully, there was no declaration, no plan, only one quiet conviction in her bones. Today, she would try. Not because she was certain, not because she had proof, but because the pull toward hope was stronger than the fear of failure. And sometimes that's all faith needs to begin. You watch her step out into the street, the sky above still streaked in pale blue and violet, lamplight flickering behind shuttered windows, the silence before the town comes alive. She moves like someone used to being invisible, but this morning she carries something invisible inside her too. A kind of resolve that doesn't show on the outside, but colors everything she sees. She notices things she didn't before. The way the breeze catches the hem of a curtain, the way the clay jars sweat in the morning dew, the way the earth seems ready. Almost like the day itself knows something is coming. She walks past the familiar corners, past the well she once leaned on, weak and tired, past the olive tree where she had sat and wept with no one to hold her. And all the while, something inside her keeps time. He is here. He is here. He is here. Have you ever felt it? That soft, trembling pull toward something you can't explain. That quiet push to rise even after too many days of collapse. She doesn't know what he looks like. She's never heard his voice. She's never been in the places where he teaches. She's not the kind of person who's invited close. But still she walks. Still she moves. Still she dares. Each step is an act of resistance. Against shame. Against silence. Against the labels they gave her. Each breath is a prayer she doesn't speak aloud. Just let me find him. Just let me touch him. You see her fingers clutch the edge of her garment. Not to hide, but to steady herself. She's not sure how many people she'll need to pass. How many eyes will notice her. How many will judge her if they know. But she knows this. No one else is going to speak for her. She's done waiting for someone else to bring the healing. Done hoping someone else will reach for her. Today she is reaching. She doesn't need to be seen. She only needs to get close. Close enough to touch the edge of him. And as the light warms the tops of the homes around her, as morning fully wakes, she steps forward, not because she is whole, but because she believes wholeness is near. Awaiting, continue section 6. Section 6, walking the long way around. The street ahead opens like a river of sandals and voices, people swaying and shifting as they move toward the shore. You walk beside her, just off to the side, your footsteps as soft as hers, your breath held in that same quiet anticipation. She doesn't head straight into the crowd. No, she's learned to move differently. You see it in her path, careful, deliberate, looping through alleys, around homes, weaving behind stalls and carts instead of between them. She's walking the long way around. Not to avoid the destination, but to avoid being seen. 12 years of being unclean has taught her this choreography. She knows the gaze of strangers. She knows the flinch of even familiar hands. She knows that her presence in the wrong place at the wrong time could lead to shame, to scorn, to worse. So she moves like a shadow. Not invisible, but small, contained. Like she's trying to take up less space in a world that never made room for her pain. She brushes past a stone wall, pausing beneath the overhang of an old baker's shop. The scent of rising bread is thick and comforting, but it makes her stomach tighten. Not with hunger, but memory. She used to come here. Before her body betrayed her. Before they stopped letting her near the others. Before she became a whisper of who she used to be. Now, she watches from a distance. The baker doesn't notice her, no one calls her name. Still, she walks, and you feel it, don't you? This quiet courage that builds not from strength, but from perseverance. To walk through the very town that turned its back on you, to keep walking, step after step, takes more than hope. It takes faith with scars. She turns down a narrow lane lined with fig trees. Children are playing ahead, laughing, running barefoot over dust and roots. She pauses again, not wanting to draw attention. A little boy nearly bumps into her, but a woman, perhaps his mother, calls him back with a quick snap of her fingers. The woman's eyes catch on her for a moment, a flicker of recognition. Or maybe suspicion. She lowers her head, takes another path, keeps going. What would you have done? Would you have turned around, gone home, told yourself, another day maybe? Or would you, like her, keep going, not because it's easy, but because something inside you refuses to quit? She finally reaches the edge of the crowd. From here, she sees more clearly, the shape of people leaning forward, trying to catch a glimpse of the man in the center. And then, there he is, Jesus, standing not far from the lake, surrounded but not overwhelmed, his eyes calm, his posture gentle, his presence like still water on a summer morning. He's not preaching, he's listening. He's turning his head toward someone's question. He's laying a hand on a shoulder. He's smiling. And she stops, just for a breath, because something about him feels different. She's watched many men, many with followers, many with pride, but this one doesn't seem to need applause. He simply is, and everything in her rises toward him like a seed stretching toward light. She doesn't push forward yet, not because she's afraid, but because she's savoring the moment. Because for the first time in a long time, she's near something, someone who doesn't repel her. She's close enough now that if she moved just a little more, she could reach the fringe of his garment. Not the center, not his hand, just the edge. You feel her breath catch. The moment is almost here, and all of her, the pain, the hope, the years, the questions, gathers into a single trembling desire. Let me touch him. Awaiting continue Section 7. Section 7. A sea of people. The press of the crowd feels almost alive now, a sea of shoulders and voices, shifting and tightening as he moves. Jesus doesn't walk quickly. His pace is steady, unhurried, but with every step he takes, the people ripple around him like wind through wheat. She watches from the fringe. You feel her pulse rise. Not from fear, from something deeper. She is close. So close. The hem of his robe, the simple cloth brushing against his ankles, moves in and out of view like a candle flickering in the dark. But getting to him, that's not simple. Every inch between her and that hem is filled. People clutching, reaching, turning, calling his name. Some are crying out for healing. Others just want to be near him. She doesn't speak. She doesn't cry out. She doesn't think she deserves to. Instead, she lowers herself slightly, letting the crowd shift above her. Like a swimmer beneath the surface, slipping between legs and robes and woven cloaks. You see her now, moving through them, gently but deliberately. Hands brushing past linen and leather, fingers barely grazing arms and sandals and dust. No one notices her. Or maybe they do, but they don't know who she is or what her body carries. She's just another person in the throng. But inside, she is a storm. 12 years of shame and silent pain. 12 years of being unclean, unseen, and all of it gathers into this moment, this breath, this reaching. What would you have done? Would you have stopped just short, convinced that the miracle wasn't for you? Would you have turned away thinking, he's too holy, I'm too broken? Or would you have done what she does now? She sees it, the hem of his robe moving gently, golden in the sun, almost close enough, and without ceremony, without anyone seeing, she reaches, fingers trembling, heart pounding. And for the briefest second, she touches the cloth. Only the fringe, not his hand, not his face, just the edge where dust gathers. And the world stops. Not with thunder, not with light, not with a cry. Just a stillness. You feel it too. The hush inside her bones, the sensation that something has shifted. She draws her hand back quickly, eyes wide. No one has noticed. The crowd keeps moving. He keeps walking. But she knows, her body knows. The pain that gripped her like a second skin is gone. The bleeding has stopped. It doesn't fade slowly, it ceases completely. She gasps, but softly, covers her mouth, drops her head. It worked. Not because of a spell, not because of a formula, not because she said the right words, but because she believed that even the fringe of him held more power than years of medicine and ritual combined. She doesn't know what to do now. Her heart is racing. Her knees feel weak, not from illness anymore, but from awe. What would you feel in that moment? Relief? Joy? Terror that someone might see? She tries to back away, to slip once more into the crowd, healed but hidden. But something halts her. Not a hand, not a voice. A pause. Jesus stops. In the middle of the movement, he stops, and everything around him seems to follow. The sea of people stills, just enough for his words to rise like wind. Who touched me? And her breath catches, because he felt it, not the touch, the faith. Word count, awaiting, continue, section 8. Section 8. The moment she couldn't hide. The question hangs in the air, simple, quiet, impossible to ignore. Who touched me? You feel it ripple through the crowd like a hush passing from face to face. Eyes dart, brows furrow, shoulders turn. Someone laughs softly, uncertain. One of the disciples, close by, speaks first. Master, there are people pressing all around you. Everyone's touching you. And they're right. The street is a tangle of bodies and breath and dust. People brushing, bumping, reaching. But he's not asking about a bump in the crowd. He felt something deeper. A pull. A thread of faith tugged loose from the fabric of the crowd. I know someone touched me, he says again. Power went out from me. His voice is not angry, not accusing. It's aware, open, searching gently. And she knows. She can't hide anymore. You watch her freeze, one hand still near her chest, the other curled beneath her shawl. She had come to be unnoticed. She had planned to slip in and out like wind through reeds. But now, the wind has stilled, and every eye is beginning to look around. She could leave. She could pretend. She could disappear into the crowd and keep the miracle for herself. But something stronger than fear begins to rise. Not boldness, not pride. Something truer. Truth. She turns. Slowly, her body is no longer hunched from weakness, but her hands still tremble. Her heart beats like a drum in a quiet room. She steps forward, not through the side this time, but toward the center. You can almost hear her breath in your own chest. She kneels, not because he demands it, but because something in her spirit recognizes the holiness in this moment. She lifts her eyes, just enough to meet his. And when she speaks, her voice is soft but clear. It was me. The crowd parts a little more. You feel their surprise, their confusion. Some may recognize her, others may recoil. But Jesus does not move away. He does not flinch. She tells him everything, the whole truth. Her illness, her suffering, the shame, the years, the loneliness that wrapped itself around her like cloth, and the touch. How she reached out, not even for him, but just the edge of his robe, and how in that instant she was made whole. She expects something, a scolding, a correction, a reminder that she broke the rules, that she shouldn't have touched him. But instead he kneels too. So close. And then he says it. Daughter. You feel the words settle like morning light across water. Not woman, not you, not stranger. He calls her daughter. No one has called her that in so long. And his eyes, they hold no judgment, only warmth, only welcome. Your faith has made you well, he says. Go in peace, be freed from your suffering. And just like that, the wound of 12 years, physical and invisible, is named and released. Not just healed. Seen, loved, restored. Can you imagine that? The one thing she never dared hope for. Not just healing of the body, but of the soul. You see her shoulders rise, then fall. A long-held breath finally let go. She stands, different now, not because of what she touched, but because of who touched her back. And you realize something, too. Faith isn't loud, it's not always confident. Sometimes it crawls through crowds and shakes with every step, but when it reaches, he always feels it. Word count, awaiting, continue section 9. Section 9. The way he said daughter. The crowd, still buzzing with whispers, begins to shift again. Some marvel, some murmur, some try to understand what just happened, what it meant. But you and she, you're still in that one sacred breath. He called her daughter. It wasn't just a word, it was a restoration, a title returned, a wound mended by sound. She stands there, heart still echoing with it. Daughter. Not patient, not unclean, not forgotten. Daughter. Do you feel what it meant? To someone who hadn't been touched in over a decade. To someone whose name had been replaced by whispers and warning looks. To someone whose very presence made others step away. He could have healed her in silence. He could have let her slip away unnoticed, miracle in hand. But he didn't. He stopped. He looked. He spoke. He named her. Because healing isn't just about the body. It's about being brought back into belonging. You watch her. Shoulders no longer folded. Head no longer bowed. The name he gave her begins to settle deep, like oil seeping into cracked clay. She touches her own chest gently. not to check for pain. There is none now. But as if to ask, is this really me? Am I truly changed? And yes, she is. Not just because the bleeding stopped, but because shame let go, and something else takes its place, a peace that doesn't tremble. You look back toward him. Jesus has already turned to speak with someone else. The moment has passed for many in the crowd, but for her it stretches on. You walk beside her now as she steps back, not away from him, but toward herself. It's not the same kind of retreat. This is not hiding. It's a homecoming. Her hand brushes the fringe of her shawl again, not to conceal, but to remember. She doesn't need to hold on to his robe anymore. Something deeper holds her now. Peace. She walks back through the crowd. And this time, people move differently around her. Not because they know what happened, but because she does. And that changes everything. She pauses near the fig tree she once used as a hiding place. Now she stands beneath its leaves with a quiet strength. What would you feel in this moment? Would you walk back into the world quietly, or proclaim what he'd done? She doesn't shout, she doesn't preach, but her very posture speaks. I am no longer who I was. And that's enough. Sometimes miracles aren't meant to be fireworks. Sometimes they're soft, steady awakenings. And he knew that. That's why he stopped. That's why he spoke. Because healing without identity is incomplete. And he doesn't do halfway. Daughter. That one word lingers like light on water. And somewhere in your own spirit you wonder, what would it sound like if he called you that? What would it change? Awaiting, continue section 10. Section 10. Peace rests on her shoulders. She walks now with no need to glance behind her, no longer afraid of what footsteps might follow, no longer weighed down by the burden of being seen. Something invisible, yet undeniable, rests on her shoulders. Peace. You see it in how she moves. Not hurried, not small. There's a grace to her now, quiet but new, as if every step forward is unfamiliar, but welcomed. She hasn't felt lightness in so long. Even her breath comes easier. Like air itself is meeting her differently. The pain is gone. But more than that, the shame has slipped off like a heavy cloak left at the door. And peace has taken its place. Not just a feeling, not a passing mood. It's something deeper. A stillness that begins in the soul and ripples outward. The kind of peace that doesn't require circumstances to change, because you have changed. She walks down a narrow path between two houses. Children laugh behind a nearby door. A woman calls her son in from the street. Ordinary sounds, but today they seem brighter, like she's re-entering a world that had shut her out. And the world, somehow, is ready to welcome her again. She presses her hand lightly to her chest, where her heart pounds slower now, steady and calm. She thinks about the way he looked at her, not just as someone to fix, but as someone worth knowing, worth pausing for, and her fingers curl inward as if to hold that moment again. You walk beside her, quiet, because some moments don't need words. You see the curve of her lips, not a full smile, but something softer. A beginning. What would it feel like to know that nothing about your past could cancel your belonging? That the worst parts of your story were already known, and still, he called you daughter? That's what peace feels like. That quiet confidence. Not that everything ahead will be easy, but that you won't face it carrying the shame of yesterday. She steps into the shade of a fig tree and leans against the trunk. Birds flutter in its branches above. A breeze stirs the hem of her garment, and for a moment she lets herself rest. It's not the kind of rest that comes from exhaustion. It's the kind that comes after deliverance. Like the exhale after a long-held breath, like the stillness that follows a storm. You remember how she moved before. Careful, shadowed, hidden. But now she's rooted. She doesn't need to chase healing anymore. It found her, and called her by name. Go in peace, he had said. And she is. Going. In peace. Not carrying it, not chasing it, becoming it. You wonder, have you ever let peace truly rest on your shoulders? Not something you earn, not something you prove worthy of, but something given. Freely. That's the kind of healing he gives. Not just restoration of the body, but rest for the soul. She closes her eyes under the fig tree, not to hide, to remember. To breathe. To carry that moment forward into all the ones that will follow. And you, standing nearby, feel that same peace begin to touch your own shoulders too. Awaiting, continue section 11. Section 11. The crowd falls silent. Not all miracles are loud. Not all awakenings come with trumpets or flashes of fire. Sometimes it's the silence afterward that carries the true wonder. The hush that falls, not because people are told to be quiet, but because something sacred has just passed through them. That's what happens now. The crowd, which moments earlier had buzzed with energy, is quiet. Not because they understand fully. Most don't. Not because they all believe. Some still hesitate, but because they saw something that moved them beyond explanation. And deep inside, something told them to pause and pay attention. You hear it in the way the wind rustles through palm leaves above. You feel it in the way a child stops mid-sentence, in the way an elder removes his hand from a walking stick and simply holds it still. They saw Jesus stop for her. They saw him turn. They heard him call her daughter. And for a fleeting moment, it was like time bent slightly, and everyone glimpsed how heaven sees us. You glance around. People exchange quiet looks. Some tilt their heads, unsure what they've just witnessed. Others shift uncomfortably, as if realizing they had never truly seen her before. One woman touches her own wrist where she once bore a scar, fingertips resting there like a memory resurfaced. A young boy, previously chattering, now stands in his mother's arms, watching the road where the miracle unfolded. And though no one announces it, no one dares speak too loudly. Because the air still shimmers with something holy. It's as if they know this wasn't just about one woman, this was about them all, about every unspoken ache, every private shame, every silent prayer breathed into the folds of a pillow at night. The crowd begins to part slowly now. Some stay behind, deep in thought. Others follow Jesus as he moves again, but quieter than before. Because when you witness mercy like that, you don't rush forward. You walk softer. You carry the echo of it with you. She walks too. You watch her, not hurrying, not hiding. She glances up, catches the eyes of someone she knows. They blink, surprised. Maybe they hadn't seen her in years. Maybe they had, but never really seen her. And now, in the aftermath of one small touch, they see differently. That's what Jesus does. He doesn't just change the person, he changes how others see them. He rewrites the room, resets the eyes, recalibrates the soul's attention. You wonder, who have you not truly seen? Who among you walks heavy under burdens no one acknowledges? And could you be the one who pauses like him, long enough to look deeper? The woman doesn't wave. She doesn't seek applause, but her presence speaks louder now than ever before. Not because she's louder, because she's free. And the silence that lingers around her isn't awkward. It's reverent. The kind of silence that follows a sacred act. The kind that lets transformation settle, gently, like morning mist. And in that stillness, you too are changed. Awaiting continue section 12. Section 12. The road home looks different. Her feet carry her through the same streets she walked that morning. Same stones beneath her sandals, same corners and walls and market stalls, but everything looks different now. Because she is different. You can feel it in the way she walks. No longer keeping to the shadows, no longer drifting along edges. She walks in the open, not boastfully, just present, fully here. As though she's been reintroduced to the world, and the world is seeing her anew. She passes the olive tree again, the same tree where she once stood in the hush of shame, hidden from the sun. Now the light touches her face freely. You see her pause near the well, the one she avoided for years. It once stood as a symbol of what she couldn't do. She couldn't gather water when others were near, couldn't share a space that made her impurity visible. But now, she steps up beside it, draws water with slow, easy hands, lets it run over her palms and smiles. A small moment, but sacred. Because healing doesn't just happen in a flash, it continues in these ordinary returns to life. She notices the fig tree again, its leaves fluttering gently in the midday breeze. Children run past, laughing as they chase one another. One little girl pauses, looks up at her, and for a moment, just smiles. She smiles back. The look exchanged needs no words. It carries something timeless. I see you. You matter. She continues down the path toward the part of town where her home waits. The same home. The same door. The same worn threshold. But she enters it differently now. Because when you've been made whole, even your old surroundings begin to feel new. You wonder, how many places have you avoided returning to? How many familiar doors feel heavy because of what you once carried through them? And what if, like her, you returned not as the same person, but as someone healed? She steps inside. The room is quiet. Sunlight spills across the floor. She sits. Not from weakness, but from welcome. And for the first time in years, she isn't bracing for pain. She lets her body rest fully into the mat beneath her, lets her eyes close briefly, and instead of sorrow waiting behind her lids, she finds stillness. Peace. That same peace that wrapped her on the road. That same peace spoken from his voice. It remains, not just near her, within her. You see her fingers trace the edge of her shawl again, the same shawl she pulled around herself in fear, now draped across her shoulders with quiet grace. It no longer hides her. It clothes her. There's no need to shrink anymore. No reason to disappear. She is no longer the woman defined by her suffering. She is the one who reached, who believed, who was seen, who was called daughter. And as she breathes deeply in her home, you feel something open in yourself too. That maybe, just maybe, the road you're on can lead back to peace. That healing may come quietly, that it might begin with a whisper, that the miracle could already be near, and maybe, like her, you only need the courage to reach. Awaiting continue section 13. Section 13. Remembering what was broken. The walls of her home whisper memories, soft echoes of nights she wept into her blanket, of mornings she dared not step outside, of prayers uttered with cracked lips and no reply. Now, in the quiet light, she sits with those memories, not to relive them in sorrow, but to honor the distance between who she was and who she is now. You watch her look around slowly. That corner near the door? She once collapsed there, exhausted from days without strength. That small pottery bowl? She once clutched it, believing it might carry healing herbs. And her bed, the same mat where she once curled up in pain, night after night, now holds her as someone made whole. She does not push the memories away, she welcomes them, because they're part of the story. The miracle was not only in the moment of healing, but in the years of endurance before it. What would you do with your pain? If it no longer held power over you? Would you forget it? Or would you, like her, let it remind you of what grace has carried you through? She rises slowly and reaches for a folded cloth in a wooden chest, the one she always kept clean, though she never had guests. She smooths it gently across the table, and for the first time in years she prepares a simple meal. Bread, water, a few olives, carefully laid out. Not because she expects someone to join her, but because she feels worthy to sit at her own table again. You see it in her hands, how they move with care. Not rushed, not hesitant, every motion an act of gratitude. She eats slowly, each bite a declaration. I am here, I am whole, I am worthy of life. And as she chews, tears prick her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the gentleness of it all. The way healing has settled into her bones, the way her own home no longer feels like a prison. The way peace has wrapped around even the broken parts of her story. She whispers a quiet thanks, not for the suffering, but for the one who met her in the middle of it. You remember the crowd, the rush, the noise, the voices. Now this silence feels holy, a different kind of miracle. The kind that arrives not in the moment of touch, but in the slow realization that everything has changed. She walks to the window, watches the light shifting through branches. And you know, this day will stay with her forever. Not because of what stopped hurting, but because of the way she was seen, named, loved. And maybe that's what your own healing begins with too. Not a thunderclap, not a spectacle, but a still, sacred pause in which someone turns to you and says your name with love. That's what he did for her, and that's what he still does. Awaiting continue section 14. Section 14. Word be evening, the sun hangs low, casting golden ribbons through the narrow streets, softening stone walls and warming the edges of every doorway. She steps outside again, not to go far, but just to feel the evening settle over her skin. The world hasn't changed overnight, but her presence in it has. And as she walks, she notices something new. Eyes, people noticing her. Not with suspicion, but curiosity. A neighbor lifts his head slightly as she passes. A woman at a well pauses mid-draw. Two boys playing in the dust stop to look. It's not the kind of attention she feared for so long. This is something else. Word has started to spread. Not just of the miracle, but of her. The woman who had suffered. The one who couldn't be touched. The one who reached out when no one else would, and was made whole. You feel the shift. There's no formal announcement. No trumpet, no parade. Just quiet whispers from one door to the next, from one heart to another. Did you hear? She's different. She's well. And though no one says it directly to her, she can feel it in the air. The stigma that clung like a second skin is beginning to fall away. Because once Jesus touches you, your reputation begins to shift too. Not everyone understands. Some still question. Some still hang on to the old labels. People always do. But truth has a way of finding light. And tonight, it moves through the town gently, like smoke from a lamp, like fragrance from crushed herbs, like healing through weary limbs. She pauses at a corner near the synagogue. She's not ready to go in just yet. Too many memories there. But she stands outside it with her head held high. Not because she needs to be seen, because she is no longer afraid of being seen. Can you imagine what that freedom feels like? To no longer shrink away from places where you once weren't welcome? To walk streets that once whispered about you, now with peace resting in your every step? She moves toward the olive grove nearby. The quiet calls to her again. She finds a rock beneath the largest tree and sits. The same tree she once leaned against in pain now holds her in rest. Above, the leaves dance in the last light. A soft wind brushes past her cheek, and her eyes close, not in weariness, but in wonder. She thinks about the day, the way the crowd moved, the way her fingers barely brushed his robe, the moment the pain vanished. But more than that, she remembers his eyes, the kindness, the knowing, the word he chose, daughter. She breathes it again now, not out loud, but inside. Daughter. And as the first stars appear, you see something sacred settle across her face. Not just relief, not just gratitude, but reverence. Because she knows what happened to her today wasn't just physical. It was a doorway into something eternal. Awaiting continue section 15. Section 15. A healing that echoes beyond her. She sits in the quiet of her room, the hush of the evening settling like soft linen over everything. You see her hands resting on her lap. Calm now, no tremble, no tension. There is no need to hold on tight, no urge to cling to the moment in desperation. The miracle has rooted itself deep within her, not just in her body, but in her soul. And it begins to dawn on her. This healing, it isn't just for her. It's going to ripple. It's going to reach. Already, word has begun to travel like soft wind between households, like hushes shared over small fires and meals. Did you hear about the woman? Is it true? They say she just touched his robe. People are curious. But more than that, they're hopeful. Hope is beginning to rise like a tide in places where despair had lived for too long. She doesn't know it yet, but her quiet act of faith, one reach, one brush of fingertips, has become a beacon. Not loud. Not theatrical. But lasting. Because that's how the kingdom often comes. Not through force, but through someone daring to believe that even the smallest act of faith is seen. She rises, steps outside into the cool night. Above her, stars stretch wide and deep. The village is mostly asleep now, but the air still hums with something holy. She walks a few paces and pauses near a gate. Behind it, she hears soft breathing. A neighbor's child, perhaps, asleep at last after a long illness. And in her heart, she prays. A quiet, invisible offering. Not a demand. Just a sharing. Because when you've been healed, you can't help but wish it for others. She remembers how lost she felt in her waiting, how time seemed endless, cruel, and she aches for others still caught in that ache. So she prays not with eloquence, but with understanding. And maybe that's the truest kind of intercession, to sit beside another soul in spirit and whisper, "You're not alone." She returns to her home, the same walls, the same mat, but everything now glows with something more. She lies down again, not from weariness, but from restfulness. She is not waiting anymore. She is living. And as her eyes begin to close, her final thought is not of fear or pain, but of him, of his voice, of his gaze, of the robe that carried power and the heart behind it that carried love. And maybe, just maybe, she'll tell her story tomorrow. Maybe someone else needs to hear. But for tonight, she lets the silence hold her. Let's sleep come gently. Let's healing continue its quiet work far beneath the surface, like roots stretching in the dark, preparing to bear fruit. Proceeding to wind down. Section 14. Word begins to spread. By evening, the sun hangs low, casting golden ribbons through the narrow streets, softening stone walls and warming the edges of every doorway. She steps outside again, not to go far, but just to feel the evening settle over her skin. The world hasn't changed overnight, but her presence in it has. And as she walks, she notices something new. Eyes, people noticing her. Not with suspicion, but curiosity. A neighbor lifts his head slightly as she passes. A woman at a well pauses mid-draw. Two boys playing in the dust stop to look. It's not the kind of attention she feared for so long. This is something else. Word has started to spread, not just of the miracle, but of her. The woman who had suffered, the one who couldn't be touched, the one who reached out when no one else would and was made whole. You feel the shift. There's no formal announcement, no trumpet, no parade. Just quiet whispers from one door to the next, from one heart to another. Did you hear? She's different. She's well. And though no one says it directly to her, she can feel it in the air. The stigma that clung like a second skin is beginning to fall away. Because once Jesus touches you, your reputation begins to shift too. Not everyone understands. Some still question. Some still hang on to the old labels. People always do. But truth has a way of finding light. And tonight, it moves through the town gently, like smoke from a lamp, like fragrance from crushed herbs, like healing through weary limbs. She pauses at a corner near the synagogue. She's not ready to go in just yet. Too many memories there. But she stands outside it with her head held high. Not because she needs to be seen, because she is no longer afraid of being seen. Can you imagine what that freedom feels like? To no longer shrink away from places where you once weren't welcome? To walk streets that once whispered about you, now with peace resting in your every step. She moves toward the olive grove nearby. The quiet calls to her again. She finds a rock beneath the largest tree and sits. The same tree she once leaned against in pain now holds her in rest. Above, the leaves dance in the last light. A soft wind brushes past her cheek and her eyes close. Not in weariness, but in wonder. She thinks about the day, the way the crowd moved, the way her fingers barely brushed his robe the moment the pain vanished. But more than that, she remembers his eyes. The kindness, the knowing, the word he chose, daughter. She breathes it again now, not out loud but inside. Daughter. And as the first stars appear, you see something sacred settle across her face. Not just relief, not just gratitude, but reverence. Because she knows, what happened to her today wasn't just physical. It was a doorway into something eternal. Awaiting, continue section 15.